of the speech?
I don't know what I watched, to be honest. It was just sort of a meandering, incoherent ball of lies and numbers pulled out of thin air. That's when he remembered to talk about the economy, and he had to remind himself several times throughout the speech that he was supposed to be talking about the economy.
Like they put it in the teleprompter.
Right.
Talk
Before
about the
then
economy.
he decided to go off on a tangent about like tampons or crime in San Francisco. I'm not making these things up. You can look at the transcripts or the speech itself. But when he was talking about the economy, he was just making stuff up. I mean, there are too many things to fact check, but I can go through a few that I jotted down while I was watching it. He talked about how there was a war on American energy, which is not true. Nearly every form of energy production is at or recently touched a record high. Oil, gas, solar, wind, battery production, et cetera. He said bacon prices have gone up 4 or 5 times what they used to be. Not true. They're like $1 more than they were when he left office. He talked about deporting immigrants and how that would help with inflation. It would probably raise inflation. He talked about crime going up. Crime is actually going down. The murder rates are on track this year to be at or below what they were every year of the Trump presidency. He talked about where are the jobs. In fact, we've had record job growth, among other things. So it was just like, I don't know if that stuff was in the teleprompter or, was beeping around in his head somewhere and it just came out his mouth, but it was not the most coherent speech.
Well, look,
I only go to you, Joe, because I know that this is important, right? The economy. You think this is, and the polls say this is Trump's best issue.
It is, yeah.
Look, I think, again, we can have a very nuanced macroeconomics conversation in which I probably wouldn't be at this table and we'd have a whole another table of people. We're not here to talk about macroeconomics. We're here to talk about kitchen table finances. And I think if you look at it through that prism, yes, you can critique the numbers of President Trump. I don't think that President Trump has ever been the person that you wanted to be running the fact checker. But I think if you're talking about an ability to tap into these sentiments that are very much real and very much supported by numbers, I do think that there are real things that Americans are feeling. No, there's not a war on energy in the sense that we're not having higher energy production, but it does feel that if you're looking at the policies Democrats are trying to pass, whether it's New York State trying to mandate that every school bus become electric, whether it's the fact that we have Indian Point shutting down the nuclear plants, whether we know for a fact that the institutional memory necessary to bring more nuclear plants online at a time when we need that type of production the most, all of that stuff is critical, and it's making the American middle class poorer.
All of those things are, I hear what you're saying about people's lived experiences, but if there is a war on energy, but all the metrics of energy production are going up. That doesn't make sense.
Well, it's gas prices. Gas prices are up 30%, and people really feel that.
Grocery prices going up, right? Like, so there's a real.
Grocery prices
there
are
is a
certainly
real
going
conversation
up.
that can be had.
Grocery prices are not going
Never
up
mind.
anymore.
What I meant to say was grocery prices are higher than they have been.
Grocery prices,
but they are not going up.
To go back to the old Malcolm X adage, if you put a knife in my back 9 inches and then take it out 3 inches, that is not progress. If you take it out 9 inches, even that is not progress. Progress is when the wound heals. Americans are still wounded. And so, yes, we can have a very nice conversation about the fact that if you go back to 2019 or if you compare it to pre-pandemic levels.
I think the bigger issue is it's not that hard to identify what Americans are unhappy about. I agree with that. And many are legitimately frustrated, stressed, financially strapped. The hard part of governing is figuring out what to do about it. And Trump just says in this speech, I'm going to bring costs down 30%. I'm going to cut gas prices 50%. How? I don't know.
He actually
Leave it to
also,
your
interestingly,
imagination.
he took credit for bringing the price of insulin to $35 which he definitely did not do. I mean, there was some of that going on, too.
Well, he had one job, and it was to show up and deliver pre-prepared remarks about his economic vision. This was a smaller event. This wasn't a rally-type event, but he played to what he often does, which is his audience. And when he started to get feedback and he started to get cheers, he wants to play the character of Donald Trump, the Kamala, you're fired, and then the name-calling. And he goes off script, and I don't doubt that there was maybe something presented for him that was a forward-looking economic vision with actual policies, but that wasn't what we heard. But what we did hear are some things that actually concern me. He keeps talking about tariffs as though, and he also keeps leaning into this trade war with China. If you are talking about tariffs on American consumers for goods that are imported, that's an Amazon tax. That's a tax on anything that's coming from abroad that you will feel at a time that Americans already feel a daily crunch when they're buying their groceries. He's not laying forward a vision that's going to make things substantially better. Well, whereas I actually do agree his first term was very strong economically. He's not leaning into that. He's leaning into the Donald Trump that thinks he needs to be at war with China.
I guess. My question is, okay, we're in a campaign. If Joe Biden on a president, and if he was still in the race, gave the speech that Donald Trump gave today, our conversation would be totally different. We'd be talking about, is he up to the job? What's his cognitive ability? What's his character? Like, we would be having a totally different conversation. But for some reason, Donald Trump gets to continue to go up, present himself, not be honest about the facts, say, I guess it's the most important issue. Well, is it or isn't it? Like, are you the guy that's going to fix the economy or not? I wonder, though, when he goes up, there were people in there that chanted and cheered. But how many more are you going to get when you show up like that?
Always the
American people are suffering. And when you get somebody that comes up onto the stage and pretends like it's a joke and is not honest about what is really happening, people are suffering. People need more money in their pockets. But when Donald Trump shows up in the way he does, it doesn't actually feel like he's going to be the person that is fighting for you at the end of the day.
The style you're talking about, this meandering nonsense, that's baked in with Donald Trump, and the standard's different because he's a celebrity candidate. People don't see him like a former president. They see him as a non-traditional politician, and there's a different measuring stick for him, and there always has been. But some of these economic policies would have been good points. Look, the tariffs are controversial. Joe Biden continued the tariffs. Is Harris going to take away the Trump tax cuts? They benefited everyone across all income levels. You know, is she just going to, take away the corporate controversial part? Is she going to keep the tax breaks for low-income families? When you're making $27,000 a year, even a few $100s makes a big difference. Those are popular policies. So the message is there to send. He's not sending it.
Well, I think also,
Very
to Lauren's point,
dysfunctional.
I mean, the reality becomes, on one day, it's President Trump has passed a policy or proposed a policy, such as removing taxes on tips, and all of a sudden people are talking about what will that cost and how does he pay for it? And then a few weeks later, Kamala Harris trots out the same thing, and all of a sudden she's making a play for voters. So, yes, we can have these really nuanced conversations.
To be fair, I wrote a column yesterday.
It's
a bad policy when both of them
to be fair to
propose
the
that it will be
economists,
cost.
including
Yes,
the
but
it was
economic
something that
supporters at the
messaged us
table,
very
people are
well.
still
Yes, and so I just think, again, if we're upset about the fact that people seem to be deviating from the facts, yes, that is a critical conversation for us to have across the board, whether we're talking about the border or whether we're talking about the economy.
But I'm more just struck by the level of performance. We're really saying this is the best our party can offer, as someone who can barely maintain a coherent
Okay,
thought.
let me just play this, just in case people missed the speech. Let me play. This is Trump going completely off script and starting to focus on Kamala Harris's laugh.